All right, joining me on the show right now, Tori Knutson, sprint car driver. Tori, do you run? I know you've made a ton of World of Outlaws starts and different things like that, but do you run a track like weekly, or do you have like a regular place that you race at?
So I've been in the full size sprint car for 10 years now, and that whole time we have never run weekly or called a certain track home necessarily. But this past season, the crazy COVID season, we actually made our first attempt at running weekly, and we actually decided to run weekly at Knoxville Raceway. So we kind of went big or went home, I guess, so to say, with that one. Um, yeah, and it took some getting used to, but honestly, I really enjoyed the consistency of the season, and I think we're gonna do that again next year. Run Knoxville weekly.
What do you like about being able to run somewhere weekly like that versus kind of traveling around and hitting a bunch of different shows?
Mostly just being able to build on the progress. I mean, I don't get me wrong, I love traveling and seeing different tracks and making friends all over the country. But it's hard to keep momentum going. I guess so to say. I mean, you learn something everywhere you go, but especially this season, I noticed night and day difference every time we hit the track. And I mean, for the most part, Knoxville's pretty consistent with how they have their track conditions. So just being able to see that progress every week and being able to make those little adjustments and see the changes that they make because we're running the same place every week was um, really cool to see. I didn't realize how you can change something so little and then go and do the same thing that you did last week with that small change and how big of a difference it can make. So we learned a lot just by being consistent and keep showing up every week.
For those people who don't know who you are, I am pretty tied into the sprint car world and have kind of kept an eye on you for the last couple of years and I've got kind of all of your stats and things like that. But for the people that don't know who you are, give us an idea about kind of your story coming up and how you kind of got to a sprint car. Did you start in karting? Did you start like in an outlaw kart? Like what was that kind of start for you?
Yeah, so I am born and raised in Monticello, Minnesota, and that turns out is not sprint car country. So the fact that I ended up, in the sprint car world like I am now is kind of I don't like to, use the word luck because I think a lot of hard work goes into people being lucky, but I was really lucky to be able to meet the people I met throughout my racing career. My dad raced modifieds ever since before I was born, and he got me started into flat carts when I was 4 years old. So right off the bat, I'm super grateful to be able to start when I was that young. And then it wasn't any special kind of go-kart program we had going on. Basically, we raced during the afternoon, and then my dad races modified at night, and it was just kind of keep us busy, keep us out of trouble type of thing. And then lucky enough to meet somebody that had information on a wing cart when I was 11, and there was this track, Thunderhill Speedway out in Menominee, that was getting up and going, and close enough to home where we could go race there every once in a while. And we gave it a go, and I fell in love with it because my dad actually made the mistake of parking next to a sprint car team when I was 4 years old, and I took my first look at a sprint car and I said, "Dad, I want one of those." So ever since I was little, I kind of had my eyes set on the sprint car rather than the modified. So we did the wing cart when I was 11, and then we raced that for a couple of years, and then met somebody that had a micro and was willing to give us a good deal on it and help us with that. So we got to the micro when I was 13, raced that for a few years, and met somebody with a 360 for sale. So it's kind of crazy how all the cards played out for me in that way. Um, it's it's been kind of a crazy ride because, like I said, my dad was really good at modifieds, very knowledgeable on that aspect. But the whole sprint car thing was and still is very new to us. So um, we've been keeping at it for 10 years, and now we're at Knoxville Raceway, and that's kind of in short how how I got to this point.
Do you remember the first time you jumped in that 360 and how it felt?
Yeah, pretty much. I remember, I mean, it was in the moment, it's kind of just like, you're focused on what you have to do. But I do remember climbing in, and they pushed me to staging, and I took a second. I was like, wow, like this is what I've always wanted to do. Like at that point, all of my dreams have come true. It was, pretty surreal feeling. And I like to, take a step back from everything actually pretty often and just realize like how grateful I really am to be able to have, opportunities like that. Whether it's a 360 or even when I was racing 305 there for a few years, like we got to race at facilities like Jackson Motorplex, which is, one of the nicest facilities in the Midwest. And, I might be in a 305 and it might not have been my best night, but, we got to be the opener for the World of Outlaws, which at that time was a highlight of my season. So, yeah, it's really cool to have moments like that.
How quickly did it take you to kind of get comfortable in a sprint car, kind of making that jump from micros and things like that? Before you felt really kind of good and kind of knew what you were doing in the car.
I mean, to be honest with you, the wing cart really, I think, sets a lot of drivers up for, being able to drive a sprint car well, just because, well, the racing is so competitive in wing carts. I mean, it it really is. I think, and I wish I could still go back and drive a wing cart just a few times just to keep up on my skills, because it's so competitive and you really have to be up on the wheel. Um, so like going into the 360 and the 305, it wasn't, I mean, there's always a learning curve. At first I definitely was like, oh my gosh, what did I get myself into? But I mean, you pick up on it, and when you really want to do something, you pretty much do whatever you have to do to get there. And I was determined to make it work. So I wasn't gonna, try it once and let that dream slip away necessarily. So I think that had a lot to do with kind of busting the learning curve. But it's kind of, because I mean, I just look back at this year and I remember telling my dad, with the 410 at Knoxville, I was like, Dad, I feel like I'm relearning how to drive a sprint car. Like, what are we doing? Kind of a thing. So yeah, I guess the sprint car racing up here, not that it isn't good or competitive by any means, because there's a lot of talent up here, but we also weren't dealing with the kind of horsepower that most people are around the country. So that definitely helped ease my way into the sprint car world, is not necessarily dealing with 900 horsepower under the hood right off
Oh,
the bat.
yeah, I want to get to your 410 transition here in a little bit, but first, as you're coming up in 305s and 360s, what are the tracks that you're running up there?
So I actually started at Arlington Raceway, which is literally, actually, I grew up there. I started my kart racing career there. That's where my dad raced modifieds. And then I also did some IMCA 305 stuff there too. And then Cedar Lake has quite a few sprint car specials over in Wisconsin. And then Jackson Motorplex, we actually hit quite a bit. And we went up to Grand Forks and Fargo a couple times too. So we kind of just bounce around. Literally, the closest weekly sprint car racing to us is Knoxville. So, up until this point, we were just racing where we could when we can. Me and my whole team both, all have full-time jobs. So, some seasons we raced a lot, and some seasons we'd be lucky if we got 10 shows in. And that's just kind of the downfall of not having somewhere weekly to go.
When you say you raced a lot, what was a lot back then? Are you talking 20, 30 shows? How many shows are you talking about?
Oh man, not even. Honestly, a lot to me was like 18 shows. That was the most I had ever done up until this year, and I think this year we had 20 or maybe just short of 22 shows possibly. Which is crazy, because considering with, COVID and everything, that it was my biggest season. It was, again, I feel really lucky that the 410 racing really, really thrived during this. I guess that's one of the benefits of racing with people who race for a living, is they want to race. So the fact that this was the year we decided to go all out 410 racing was kind of a benefit in a roundabout way.
Who do you kind of rely on as you're coming up for advice? I mean, is it just dad, or are there other people around you that you can kind of go to for questions?
Yeah, so my dad is a huge part of my racing program. I mean, he's been there literally from the start. So we communicate very well together. And when I explain what the car is doing, he usually can understand what I'm saying without any question. And when he's telling me what I need to do on the track, it makes sense to me, and I can adjust my driving from there. All of us kind of had a learning curve coming to Knoxville. We knew it wasn't going to be a walk in the park racing there because just the talent that's there. But that was a humbling experience. So we did recruit in some extra help. We have a guy named Brad that helped us. He's helped us literally every weekend. He actually builds my wings for me at Hawk Wings. And he's been going to Knoxville for a long time. So we kind of asked if he'd come on board and help us out this season, and he has. And it's made a world of a difference just with having his prior knowledge of Knoxville and 410 racing in general. We not only did we, it was this pretty much the first time that we've run Knoxville Raceway, but it's 200 more horsepower than we've ever had. We had a brand new car. Like, it was a lot of things just going together. So having Brad there to help me and my dad, in on a little tips and tricks, that was really helpful. And then my sister is also a huge part of my team. She's, I think, only missed one race this whole year. And she's kind of just there for anything I need, but especially moral support, and she tightens my seat belts, and just all the little things that just add up to be a lot.
So when you're not in the sprint car, you said you have a full-time job. What else do you do?
Yeah, so it's nothing fancy. I am a forklift operator in a warehouse here locally. I work 40 hours a week, mostly, give or take. It's end of the quarter right now, so we're really busy right now. But yeah, I just that helps me keep the car on the track. And ultimately my goal, obviously, I mean, I think it's every sprint car driver's goal is to go on tour with like the World of Outlaws or the All Stars. And I'm only 25, so that's what I'm working towards still. And driving a forklift around Monday through Friday is what I got to do until I get there.
How do you kind of balance work and going to the racetrack and trying to make sure the car's ready?
It's hard. I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you, there is some times where I do get really overwhelmed, especially in the middle of racing season. But yeah, again, I try and just step back and try and find the positive things in the different seasons of the year. I'm grateful to be busy during racing season because has been times where I haven't had much to do because I wrecked a car and I either couldn't afford to put together a new one, or we're waiting on parts or whatever. So like this year, racing as much as we did, I was grateful that we had a car, ready to go every weekend, that we had a car that needed to be worked on so we could keep racing. And it wasn't something like we wrecked a car and we have nothing to do now. So, and now things are slowing down, which is really sad because all my friends are out there still racing. But, today I told myself, like there were days where you out working at midnight and you wanted to go to bed. So at least, I got a little more free time right now, I guess. So I just try and find the positive and in every season, I guess.
Tell me about now this transition from, some 305 stuff, 360 stuff into 410 competition. Why do that now, and how has that been this season?
I mean, ultimately, that's what I've wanted to do from the get-go. I wanna race with the World of Outlaws and the All Stars and Donnie Schatz and all the big names. And the opportunity presented itself, and I knew I would regret it one day down the road if I didn't, at least try. And I get a lot of comments about trying, I guess, to put it nicely, because somebody's always has something to say about anything. So
How does
it's
that, like, how do you kind of handle that stuff? Is it, is it social media comments? Is it people at the racetrack? Do you just try to ignore it? Like, how does that stuff kind of happen for you?
yeah. So the mean comments, I mean, I just pretty much everybody's entitled to an opinion, and I don't necessarily have to like it. And if it's something I don't like, then I just tell myself that's their opinion, that's what they think, and ultimately it doesn't matter what they think because their opinions isn't what's gonna go out there and drive the car for me. It comes down to me and how hard I'm willing to work. So um, I try to be very self-aware of my operation and what I've got going on, but also in the end their opinions don't matter. So
When you talk about preparation, what are things that you do to be prepared to get in the car? Are you watching dirt vision videos and flow videos to kind of see tracks? What does that look like?
yeah, I watch almost every single Outlaw show on Dirt Vision, and I watch a lot of All Star shows on Flow too. I watch a lot of YouTube videos at Knoxville. If I'm not racing myself, I try to be at the track as much as I can. Going racing at Jackson on Fridays is really hard. Working full time and then also trying to get a car ready to go to Knoxville. But there's a lot of times where I'd still go and watch and just help out teams if they need it. This weekend, I'm actually going to Williams Grove for National Open as a little mini vacation, long weekend type of thing. Just because every time I'm there, I learn something new, whether it's using baby oil on the car versus mud off, or just the small things are really what adds up to having a well-oiled machine of a program, I guess. So that's one thing I do try to do often, and not only sprint car racing, but I've gone to a few midget shows too, and non-wing shows, and I just try to be a sponge and soak up as much knowledge as I can because I do still have a lot to learn. I mean, us as a whole team have a lot to learn yet, so that's where being self-aware comes in play. As I realize I have a lot to learn, so I'm just out there trying to learn as much as I can. And then we do a lot of maintenance throughout the week. I really believe that you can't, like, races are won in the shop. So we go through the car completely every single week. You know, between motor maintenance and car maintenance, and then tire work, and then trailer maintenance. It all takes a lot of work, and it all needs to be fully functioning to run a program like that, especially at Knoxville.
Give me an idea about racing at Knoxville. I actually just talked to Jamie Ball here not long ago, and it's just like such an iconic place. But what does it mean for somebody like you who is such a sprint car fan, and this is what you want to do, to be able to race at Knoxville?
It's actually really hard to describe, and it's other than it's a dream come true, really. Like I said earlier, I don't necessarily live in sprint car country. It's big modified country up here. So um, just being a sprint car fan alone and racing up here for the majority of my life, or majority of my sprint car career, um, there's people that I've looked up to that have never gotten a chance to race at Knoxville, and some of them won't ever get a chance to race at Knoxville. Despite how talented they are, it's just not in the cards for them. So I feel really lucky that it was in the cards for me, and that I do have a chance to, I guess, make a name for the people that do race up here, that it is possible, and try and just be a role model, I guess, so to say, that you can start at the lower ranks of sprint car racing, and work your way up to Knoxville. And it's not easy. It's really hard, and it's been really humbling, but it is possible, and you don't have to have $1 million operation to do it either.
As you kind of look back over the season that you've had up to this point, what are things that you want to do better, or things you need to do better in the race car to perform better on a nightly basis?
Be smooth. Knoxville, I mean, everybody knows it's a technical track. It's a really big track, and you carry a lot of speed. Um, what stuck out to me most is even the tiniest mistakes can mess up a whole race, literally. And I didn't necessarily think I was, a real squirrely driver by any means. I mean, I have been racing for a long time, so I don't think I was necessarily all over the place, but I definitely was not as smooth as I need to be, or as smooth as anybody needs to be to race at Knoxville, especially in a 410 with kind of speed that you're carrying there. So we worked a lot on that. That actually has been my main focus this whole past year, is just being smooth and letting the car drive itself, tucking your elbows in, and just trusting the car and trusting the maintenance you put in every week. I I don't necessarily, or haven't in the past anyways, thrive on big tracks. I really like the small bull ring racing, because I just like the elbows up aggressive racing. That's just has been my style anyway. So I really had to adjust that being at Knoxville, and having some patience doesn't necessarily come naturally to me, but we're working on it, and I think that is going to be a huge goal for next year too, is being smooth and patient, and putting a lot of maintenance and work into the car itself to make it a smooth ride too.
You've made some IRA starts this year. You got some All-Star starts, some World of Outlaws starts. Well, what's it like being out on the track with those guys?
It's kind of surreal. Like I said, like I try and focus at the task at hand when it's presented to me, but when the night's all done and I look over at Bill Baylog, he parked 2 cars down, or Kyle Larson parked across the pitway from me, I'm like, wow, this is just crazy. Or you're at Dingus, and Tony and Casey are in there buying everybody drinks. I'm like, I just raced with them. Oh my goodness. Like, it's really cool. Or like, it really sinks in when I go to work on Monday, and they're like, I saw you race with Kyle Larson. Oh my God. And I'm like, yeah, I did. He's a really cool guy. His family's really nice. And they were like, he talks to you? And I'm just like, I mean, you small talk, I guess, if you want to call it that. But they're like, oh my gosh. So that's when it really sinks in, and what really makes me realize, like, just how cool of an opportunity it is to race with people like that.
Do you have like a career highlight up to this point? Do you have a race or maybe a season or something that stands out in your mind as something that was really good for you and maybe vaulted you into a next thing?
Um, yeah, I mean, I guess for me personally, and it might sound kind of, it's not like huge by any means. Like I've won track championships and rookies of the year before and everything like that, and throughout everything in the sprint car, go-karts, and stuff like that. But it isn't necessarily an accomplishment that sticks out, but mostly the first World of Outlaws show I made. I wasn't even full-time racing 410s at that point. It was 2 or 3 years ago. And then after that year, we went back to 360 racing, just because that was, more. That's beside the point. But anyways, it was my first 410 World of Outlaw show that I made, and we got to do the 4-wide salute at Cedar Lake, which is my favorite track, and the fireworks were going off, and I got to see my name on the big screen just by chance, and I was like, you know what, maybe I do belong here. Maybe I can do this. And I guess that was also kind of the turning point of my racing career, when I decided, like, I want to give this a go and see how far I can take this, because I think I can take it a lot farther than what I have so far.
What's the fan response like when you're at a racetrack? Do you have kids lined up to meet you? What does that kind of look like when you're kind of traveling around and going to places, or being at Knoxville?
Yeah, I am lucky to have a really loyal fan base. Whether it's on the internet, on Facebook, or at the track, there's all sorts of little kids that are running up and giving me a hug, and a lot of adults too that are want to come shake my hand and say thanks for being out there, thanks for the show, like, I love what you're doing, good luck. We do have quite a line after the races, and for that I'm really grateful, because I know just for a lot of drivers in general, and not just the girls, but a lot of guys too, they don't always get that kind of encouragement, especially if it's, a tough season or what have you. It's I feel really lucky to have the fans that I do, and the support behind me.
I don't know if you've thought about this at all, but do you have any ideas or thoughts behind why there aren't more women drivers? I mean, it seems like you could probably count on one or two hands, like across the country, how many actual female sprint car drivers there are. Do you have any idea why that is the case?
You know what? I really couldn't tell you. I think a lot of it comes down to funding, to be honest with you. There's this, I don't know if you'd say stereotype or necessarily thought in people's head that women drivers just naturally get more sponsorship and that it's easier to get sponsorship if you're a woman. And that is far from the case because, at least from what my experience, not everybody's going to take you seriously when they see the blonde hair, blue eyed, 5 foot girl walk in their office and say, "Hi, I'm going to go race with the World of Outlaws this year. Would you like to help me?" I mean, and that's putting it very, very blunt. Obviously, that's not how it goes, but I think that's the main issue. Also, 25-year-old girls at this point in their life might have different goals than, say I or like Natalie Decker or Paige Polyak, for instance. You get to a certain point in your life and you decide, what route you want to take, and maybe some women just decide that they want to take a different route, and that's totally fine. But I think a lot of it does come down to funding, and not honestly not just for women but for guys too, because there's a lot of talent in the lower ranks of like 305s or even go-karts and wing karts, and they don't get to the 360 or 410 sprint car point because there just isn't the funding isn't there.
Have you got an opportunity to meet other female sprint car drivers? Aaron Crockers or Paige Polyak, those like those.
Yeah, actually I race with Paige quite often. She's a really cool girl. She actually lives not too far from me. So that's cool. And then I raced with McKenna at Knoxville this year, and Jacelyn in the 305 class. Harley White was at Knoxville quite a bit this year, and Alex Hill. So it was really, really cool to see all the women at Knoxville this year. And like I said, the COVID season sucked, but it brought a lot of really cool aspects to the season as well. And then at PRI every year, I go to the International Women in Motorsports booth, and we have a little autograph signing there with Melissa. And I meet a lot of women drivers from all aspects of racing. Julie Natas in drag racing, and Brittany Zamora, and Haley Deegan, and all those cool chicks too. So it is really cool to meet the other girls that have the same interests as me.
Are you done racing for the year, or do you have more things on your schedule?
Yeah, unfortunately, we are done racing for the year. We actually just pulled the motor out of the car, and that's off to get freshened, and we pretty much got everything tore apart at this point. So I'm gonna go to Williams Grove this weekend and see all my pals and watch some good racing, and then that'll probably be the last race I'll be at for the year.
And then how much work are you going to do kind of through the off season? Are you trying to call sponsors? Are you working on the car? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, oh, I mean, I'm gonna do a lot of work. I do all of the like PR, social media stuff for my racing, and then I also do all of the sponsor work too. So I've already been full force sending out emails and thank yous, and trying to make new introductions without PRI this year. It's a little different, so there's a lot more emails being sent out and a lot more Zoom calls, but yeah, it's that's constant. Even through racing season, I'm constantly sending out sponsor emails and everything. But this is prime season for that.
What have you guys talked about what your schedule is going to be for next year? Are you going to do more of the same, or do you have other plans?
Yeah, so I think we are gonna run Knoxville weekly again. I mean, we really enjoyed it there, and um, the trip is basically worth it. So it's a 5-hour drive for us, and then we stay in Knoxville for the weekend. But it's been proven to be worth it, and become a much better driver just in the short season that we've had racing there. So we're gonna hopefully continue to grow off that and see where it can take us. And then we'll do the shows like Jackson Nationals, and then I'm praying we can race the Outlaw Show at Cedar Lake this coming year. We weren't able to do that this year, but the bigger shows like that, like, and hopefully we can go to Grand Forks and Fargo again too.
Is there a track that you've seen on Dirt Vision or something like that that you would like, you just absolutely want to get to?
Everybody thinks I'm nuts, but I want to go to Peevely so bad.
Nice. Peavey is a fantastic racetrack.
It,
I don't
it
blame you for that at all.
I know it can be absolutely wild, but honestly, like I said earlier, I love that aggressive style racing. So I think I'd have fun there, even, even if it wasn't my best finish or whatever. I think it just looks like a lot of fun.
Is there other types of cars you want to drive? I mean, would you jump in a midget, or are there other things that you're interested in trying out?
Absolutely, I'd get a midget. I mean, I'll race anything at any time. Just putting that out there. I love racing. I'm a huge racing fan. Aside from that, um, I've always thought it'd be really, really cool to get in an off-road truck, just because those look like they're just wild. But I mean, my heart really is at with the sprint cars, and I've always wanted to drive a 410 sprint car, and I'm kind of living my dream doing that right now. So, yeah, I love what I'm doing, but I also would never turn up any kind of a race car either.
Well, I appreciate you taking some time for me today. Are there people that you want to thank, people that we should shout out here before we close up?
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, I wouldn't be able to do any of this without all of our sponsors. It's our main sponsors are Minnesota Native Landscapes, Jerry's Towing, Evanston Enterprises Racing, R&W Welding, Arai Helmets, Butler Built Seats, Kaiser Wheels, and Brenton Companies, and GT Transport. Those guys keep me on the track, and a lot of them have supported me even when it didn't necessarily pay off for them in our short seasons. So we appreciate them. And then my whole team, my dad, my mom, my sister, Brad, and everybody that supports us along the way. It's I have to be patient as a driver with the car, but it's not always easy to be patient with the driver that you're trying to work with either. So they don't necessarily have an easy job, and I thank God every day that they stick with me. So,
If people want to keep up with you on social media, where can they find you?
yeah, so I have a Facebook page. It's Tornado Tori Racing, and then I am on Instagram. It's at Tornado Tori 14. I'm also on Twitter. It's at Tornado Tori 14 there as well.
Is there Tory merch anywhere that we could go find?
There will be soon. I'm actually setting up a shop while I'm in Williams Grove. So,
Perfect.
I'm sold out of almost everything right now, but once we get the shop set up, I will be restocking shirts.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate you taking some time, and good luck going forward.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on your show too.